Serena, we need you to come home. My mother's voice cracked through the phone while I stood barefoot in my kitchen, coffee dripping into the mug beside me. What happened? You know what happened, Mom said. The surgery, the rehabilitation. They're releasing me soon, and your father can't manage all this by himself. Then she laid out the plan as though my agreement had already been given. I would temporarily move back home, work remotely, drive her to rehabilitation, cook, help her bathe, handle medications, and stay there overnight. Chloe's exhausted, she added. She's already done 2 weeks. I stared at the phone. 3 years earlier, I had needed my family too. Mom's crying stopped. Serena. I'm here. Well. When I didn't answer quickly enough, irritation replaced the desperation in her voice. We're your parents. 5 words. And suddenly I wasn't 34, cancer-free, standing safely in my own kitchen anymore. I was 31 again, sitting alone in a hospital parking lot with a diagnosis on my lap, and shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. Stage 2 breast cancer. I had called my mother crying that afternoon because, for once in my life, I didn't know how to handle something alone. Mom, I have cancer. There had been silence. Then a sharp breath. Oh, Serena. For a few seconds, I thought she would say what I desperately needed to hear. We're coming. Instead, she asked questions about treatment, paused, and then said something I would remember through every infusion that followed. We can't deal with this right now. Chloe is planning her wedding. I actually thought I had misunderstood her. What? Your sister is under enormous pressure. The venue has already caused problems, and we're trying to keep everything together. Mom, I just said I have cancer. I heard you, but you have doctors. We can't drop everything. I sat behind the steering wheel, staring through the windshield. Still, I made excuses for her. Maybe she was shocked. Maybe she didn't understand how frightened I was. Maybe once treatment actually started, my parents would realize I wasn't asking them to solve cancer. I was asking them to sit beside me. A few days later, I gave Mom the date of my first chemotherapy infusion. Her response destroyed that excuse too. That's Chloe's dress fitting. Then Dad can come. He's meeting the vendor with us. I swallowed. Can one of you please be there? Another pause. Then Mom said quietly, Serena, chemotherapy has nurses and doctors. Chloe only gets married once. So I went alone. And while medication meant to save my life entered my body, my parents were celebrating wedding preparations with my sister. 3 years later, they wanted me to rearrange my entire life because suddenly their asterisk crisis deserved family support. But standing in my kitchen, listening to my mother ask me to come home, I still didn't know the worst part. Because my parents skipping my chemotherapy had only been half the betrayal. What had they done while I was fighting cancer that I still didn't know about? I had spent most of my life being the daughter nobody had to worry about. When Dad had minor surgery 2 years before my diagnosis, I rearranged my work schedule and drove him to every follow-up appointment. When Mom got overwhelmed by insurance forms or bills, she called me. Serena, can you look at this? And I always did. When Chloe came up short on the deposit for her apartment, she called me 3 days before the payment was due. Please don't tell Mom and Dad. I transferred the money that evening. So when cancer entered my life at 31, I did something unusual. I asked my family for help. After Mom's first reaction to my diagnosis, I tried convincing myself she had simply panicked. But when I called again about chemotherapy, she was already talking about Chloe. The venue changed the table arrangement, Mom complained. Your sister has been crying all morning. Mom. What? My first infusion is Thursday. She went quiet. I told you the date. Yes, but Thursday is Chloe's dress fitting. I gripped the phone tighter. Can you skip it? Serena. I'm asking you to sit with me during chemotherapy. Mom sighed. There will be nurses there. That isn't what I asked. She called Dad into the conversation. His answer came quickly. You've always been independent, sweetheart. You'll be fine. That Thursday, I walked into the infusion center alone. A nurse named Caroline showed me to a reclining chair and began going through the paperwork. Then she looked toward the empty chair beside mine. Who came with you? No one. Her expression changed slightly. Do you have someone who can drive you home if you don't tolerate the medication well? I stared at that empty chair. I'll figure something out. She touched my arm gently and said, Okay, just tell me if you need anything. That almost broke me more than the diagnosis had. A stranger had noticed I was alone. My family had chosen to make me alone. Halfway through the infusion, my phone buzzed. The family group chat. I opened it. There was Chloe standing on a pedestal in a white wedding gown. Mom was beside her, grinning. Dad was holding a glass of champagne. Another picture appeared. Then another. We found the dress, Mom wrote. I looked from those photographs to the IV line running into my arm. Maybe Chloe didn't know. That was the last excuse I had left. So I opened a private message. Started chemo today. Wish you were here. Delivered. Then read. No answer. An hour passed. Finally, my phone buzzed. Chloe had replied. Hope it goes okay. That was it. 3 words. Minutes later, I opened social media and saw a new photograph from her. Chloe stood between our parents, smiling in her wedding dress. The caption read, Perfect day with my favorite people. I locked my phone. For the first time, I stopped waiting for someone in my family to suddenly understand what they were doing. When Caroline returned with discharge paperwork, she asked, I need to confirm your emergency contacts, Diane Hayes, Robert Hayes, and Chloe Hayes. I looked at the 3 names, then at the empty chair beside me. No. Caroline paused. You need to change them. I picked up the pen. Remove all 3. And one by one, I crossed my family out. Chemotherapy didn't stop because Chloe had a wedding to plan. Week after week, I went back to the infusion center while my parents sent occasional texts asking how I was doing, usually followed by updates about flowers, seating charts, invitations, or whatever wedding crisis had become urgent that day. Maya, a coworker who had become one of my closest friends, started filling the empty chair. She brought meals when I couldn't stomach cooking. She drove me home when treatment left me weak. Then, one of my important treatment appointments landed during Chloe's bridal shower weekend. I called Dad. Could you drive me? I don't think I should be alone afterward. He hesitated. Saturday. Yes. Your mother needs me to transport decorations. I waited for him to reconsider. He didn't. Dad, this is treatment. I know, Serena, but everything's already arranged. So I paid for a ride. Weeks later, I stood outside Chloe's wedding reception wearing a wig and wondering why I had even come. But I refused to make her wedding about our conflict. Inside, everyone was celebrating. Aunt Patricia found me near the reception tables. She studied my face. Serena, sweetheart, have you lost weight? A little. Her eyes narrowed with concern. Are you sick? Before I could answer, Mom appeared beside us. She's fine, Mom said quickly. Work has been exhausting her. I turned toward her. Mom wouldn't meet my eyes. Patricia nodded slowly and walked away. Later, another relative hugged me and said, We've missed you. Your mother said work has kept you too busy for family things. My stomach dropped. They didn't know. This entire time, I had assumed nobody cared enough to call. But they hadn't been told. I found Mom outside the reception hall. Why are you lying about me? She stiffened. Not tonight. You told everyone I'm busy with work. Keep your voice down. I have cancer, Mom. I know that. Apparently nobody else does. She glanced toward the reception doors. This is Chloe's wedding. She deserves one day without everyone talking about cancer. I stared at her. Then the question that had been sitting in my mind since my first infusion finally came out. Does Chloe know you've been hiding this? Mom said nothing. Does she? Her jaw tightened. I waited. Still nothing. That silence told me enough to stop asking. I turned toward the parking lot. Serena. I kept walking. Mom hurried after me, just far enough to speak without anyone inside hearing. Then she whispered the words that followed me all the way home. Please don't ruin this for your sister. Months later, when I completed treatment, Maya was beside me. My parents were. Cancer treatment ended, but the way I lived afterward changed completely. My follow-up scans kept coming back clear. 1 year became 2, then 3. Eventually, I heard the words I had once been afraid I might never hear. Everything looks good, Serena. Cancer-free. I walked out of that appointment and called Maya first. Not Mom. Not Dad. Not Chloe. By then, my family had noticed the difference. I stopped volunteering whenever something went wrong. I stopped lending money. I still visited occasionally, still answered some calls, but I no longer rearranged my life automatically. Mom called it resentment. You've become so cold, she told me once. I didn't argue. Then, 3 years after my diagnosis, Mom fell. The injuries required surgery, followed by months of rehabilitation. Dad had physical limitations of his own, so suddenly the family needed someone to coordinate appointments, medication, meals, transportation, and paperwork. For 2 weeks, Chloe handled it. Then my phone rang. I've done my part, she said. Now it's your turn. I almost laughed. My turn. I can't keep doing everything, Serena. I have a life. So do I. You know what I mean. No, Chloe, explain it. She exhaled sharply. You have fewer obligations than I do, and you're better at this stuff. There it was. The same arrangement we had grown up with. Chloe's life was protected. Mine was adjustable. I'm not moving in with Mom, I said. Why are you making this difficult? I'm not. You assumed I would take over. Her voice hardened. Serena, you survived chemo by yourself. You can handle Mom. I stopped moving. For 3 years, Chloe had acted as if she hadn't understood how serious my treatment had been. Now she had just described it perfectly. How do you know that? What? That I went through chemo by myself. Silence. Serena, that's not the point. It is now. Mom needs help. Did Mom tell you? Another pause. Tell me what? That I was alone during treatment. Chloe sighed. Mom told me what was happening. When? During the wedding planning. I gripped the phone. Before my first infusion. Nothing. Chloe. Finally, she spoke. Yes. I closed my eyes. So when I texted you from chemotherapy, I knew. And when Mom and Dad chose your dress fitting instead of coming with me, you knew where I was. I was under enormous pressure, Serena. I couldn't believe she was defending it. I didn't want my entire wedding becoming about cancer, she continued. Mom agreed it was better to keep things quiet until afterward. There it was. The answer Mom had refused to give me outside the reception. They hadn't simply forgotten me. They had discussed me. They had made a decision. My illness had been treated like something that needed to be hidden, so Chloe could have the wedding she wanted. I opened my mouth to respond. Another call flashed across my screen. Aunt Patricia. I nearly ignored it. Then a message appeared beneath the missed call. Serena, please call me. I just found out what really happened when you were sick." I called Aunt Patricia back immediately. She answered before the second ring. "Serena, is it true? What did Mom tell you?" Patricia hesitated. "She's been calling relatives because she wants help convincing you to come home." Of course she had. What exactly is she saying? That you're still resentful about things that happened years ago. She said they supported you completely through cancer, but now you're refusing to help her when she needs you. I closed my eyes. Patricia continued, quieter now. "That didn't make sense to me. I remembered your wedding conversation with Diane. I remembered how thin you looked, so I started asking questions. For 3 years, I had carried one assumption with me. My extended family had known I had cancer and simply hadn't cared enough to call. Now I told Patricia everything. My parents skipped my first chemotherapy infusion because Chloe had a dress fitting and vendor meeting." Patricia went silent. "Dad refused to drive me to another treatment because Mom needed him to transport bridal shower decorations. Serena, Mom told everyone I was busy with work, and Chloe just admitted she knew about the chemotherapy before my first infusion." "What?" "She knew." I told Patricia the rest. Chloe hadn't merely known I was sick. She had asked our parents to keep the diagnosis quiet until after the wedding because she didn't want guests focusing on me. Patricia's voice changed. "Serena, we would have come." That sentence hit harder than I expected. "What?" "If Diane had told us, we would have helped you. I would have driven you myself. Your cousins would have brought meals. You did not have to do that alone." I sat down. For years, I had believed an entire family had abandoned me. Now I understood the truth. Most of them had never been given the opportunity to show up. My parents hadn't just left an empty chair beside me. They had helped keep it empty. That evening, Mom called again. I answered. "I heard you spoke to Patricia," she said. "I did." "So now the entire family knows our private business." "Our private business?" "You know what I mean." "No, Mom, I want to hear you say it." She became quiet. "Did you hide my cancer because Chloe asked you to?" A long pause followed. Then Mom said, "We were trying to protect the wedding." "From what?" "Serena, cancer changes the mood of everything. Chloe had spent months planning that day. If everyone knew what you were going through, the wedding would have become a sad occasion." I stared across my apartment. "You skipped chemotherapy to protect a wedding." "That's not fair." "Dad refused to drive me to treatment because of bridal shower decorations. We thought you could manage. And you told everyone I was busy with work. We didn't want people worrying." I almost laughed. "You didn't want people helping." Mom didn't answer. So I asked the question I should have asked 3 years earlier. "And who was protecting me?" Silence. Not an excuse. Not even another defense. Just silence. Finally, Mom started crying again. "I made mistakes, Serena, but I need my daughter now." And there it was. When I needed my mother, I had been expected to understand. When she needed me, I was expected to forget. I remembered the infusion chair. The empty seat beside me. My parents smiling beside Chloe in her wedding dress, while chemotherapy entered my bloodstream. Dad choosing decorations over driving me to treatment. Mom stepping between Patricia and me at the reception. Chloe admitting she had known all along. Mom waited. "Serena." I didn't yell. I didn't insult her. I gave her exactly 5 words. "Hire someone. I'm not available." Then I ended the call. For once, my family had to solve its crisis without automatically assigning it to me. Dad and Chloe arranged professional home care assistants alongside Mom's rehabilitation services. It was expensive. They had to cancel several discretionary plans and reorganize their schedules. Chloe hated it. She called once more, insisting I was punishing everyone. I told her, no, I'm refusing to rescue everyone. She never gave me an apology without attaching an excuse about wedding stress, so our relationship became distant. Mom tried telling relatives I was selfish. That stopped working after Patricia told them what had actually happened. Nobody pressured me anymore. Some relatives even contacted me privately to apologize for not being there, only to learn they had never known there was anything to be there for. Months passed. Mom gradually improved with professional support. I didn't completely cut my parents off, but access to my life changed. I visited because I chose to, not because guilt summoned me. I continued my surveillance appointments. Maya remained one of the first people I called afterward because she had earned a place in my life by occupying that empty chair when my own family wouldn't. During one visit, Mom looked at me from across the room. I miss how dependable you used to be. I held her gaze. I'm still dependable, Mom. I just learned that being dependable doesn't give people permission to abandon me when I need them. She looked down. There was nothing left to argue about. 3 years earlier, my parents had decided my cancer could wait because my sister's wedding mattered more. When they finally needed me, they discovered something had changed. I was no longer the daughter who would sacrifice herself just because they asked. I survived cancer without the family that chose a wedding over me, and surviving them taught me that being someone's daughter never meant being their sacrifice.